Okay, what's the question?
So what's the question?
What do I think what is?
What do I think love is?
What is love?
It's a complicated question, dude.
Love? That's a really deep question.
What I think love is. Okay.
Oh man, that's a difficult one. You want a short answer? You don't want my answer to that.
You can't answer that question.
That's a hard question. I don't know.
I think love is when you actually want to put someone else before yourself.
Yeah, I think love is when you're like absolutely so infatuated with someone, you like can accept their flaws and whatever, and you like them for their flaws as well as the things that that are generally likable.
It can mean almost anything that brings joy or peace to your mind.
Complicated.
Hard work.
The feeling.
God.
Overrated.
I think love is undefinable.
Love is just too much to explain it in one sentence.
Stinks.
I have no idea.
I don't know, that's a good question.
What do I think love is? I think it's one of the, probably the strongest feeling that you would ever have in your life.
Part of it's chemical in the brain. When you like kiss someone or something, chemicals get released in the brain and help produce happiness.
I tried it. Trust me.
What is love?
What is love?
What do you think love?
Destiny.
Destiny?
Yeah.
Love is destiny.
I think love is when you share an opinion with somebody and that you like each other.
Part of it is how long you can get along with a person and how well you can live with other people and how much you like the other person.
I think it involves respect. It's part of it. And like maybe an emotional connection.
I think it's an uncontrollable force that none of us can stop. But no, love is definitely like an agreement that's like otherworldly. There's definitely something magical about it.
You know, love can be a lot of things. I mean, it's really a connection between two people that care about each other.
I guess like the greatest affection that you can show somebody and show them that you really care about them.
Disinterested benevolence. Not disinterested in as in, you know, I'm not interested in you. More like there's nothing in it for the one who is loving.
So you want me to carry on? Okay, well, love is a decision. Love is a commitment.
There's the Corinthians verse, love is patient, love is kind, love is not envy, love is not boast, it is not self-seeking, all those things. So it's kind of my definition, I guess.
So many people, and some can be so stumped over what is love, and you can hear so many definitions of it. Well, I'm so glad to be here this morning, and I have to tell you, I don't think we're going to learn anything brand new this morning, so please don't tune out on me. But I am so as I was praying about what would the Lord have me share, I obviously realized, oh, it's Valentine's Day weekend. And so I thought about relationships. And I thought, well, I don't want to just focus on one type of a relationship. And so when I think about relationships, what is the key to relationship? It's love. And you know, there have been studies done, there have been so many things, books, articles written on love. It's interesting, we always think that there's 4 types of love. Anybody know one of those? Agape love. We'll talk a little bit about that. Anybody know another one? Eros. Yeah, that would be the Valentine's Day love. And then there's Philia, which is really the brotherly love coming from Philadelphia. That's the city that I got my car broken into. Somehow I think they forgot about what love is there. And then there's Storge, which is really like the love of a parent and a child. Now, Psychology Today, those of you who know me know that I am a counselor. And so the psychological world can always like to have their own opinion. So Psychology Today says there's actually 7 loves. And I'm sure you can talk to people who will find way more than that. But so often we think only about falling in love when we hear that. You know, on Valentine's Day, I decided to do a couple of statistics to see what is Valentine's Day all about? But more than that, what does it cost? Do you know that I found that $19.6 billion was thought to spend on this year's Valentine's Day? $19.6 billion. That's an average of about $143 got spent on different people. Sorry, Jacob. You did not get that. You got a Reese's Pieces round heart-shaped box. So $4.7 billion of those dollars is spent on jewelry, hoping that it might last. $681 million was spent on gifts for pets. Okay, raise your hand if you gave your pet a Valentine's Day gift. So I have to tell you, my dog got less than my son. Now, our oldest daughter lives in Northridge, and she has the most adorable French Bulldog puppy. And so I ended up sending both my daughters, our other one is up in Chico, and I like being that cheesy, goofy mom. And so I always find kind of something that's going to make my kids laugh. So I found this little dog that has a cupcake and a baker's hat on it. And when you push the paw, the dog runs round and round and back and forth and sings some weird song. I don't know. But I was laughing in CVS when I saw it, so I thought that I would send it to my daughter. And my daughter Caitlin sent me a video of her bulldog who thought the animal was for him and chased that little dog all over, and now his most favorite toy is the cupcake that he destroyed off that dog. So without even realizing, I guess I'm one of those pet people. Yeah. And then my mom was the queen of cards. And she not only gave cards, she kept cards. After my mom died, we went through the storage unit, and she had boxes upon boxes of cards, starting back from when she was a teenager. And that was so important. Well, obviously, other people think cards are important because there's $144 million going to Hallmark because of cards. And it's interesting that people think that, man, if I just spend this amount, I'll be able to show love. Or maybe I'll be able to seek out love. The last statistic that I found, and this isn't about Valentine's Day, but it is pretty sad to me, that almost $1 billion a year is lost on people being scammed on internet dating sites. And so people trying and looking for love and not finding it, and then losing their money in the process. What a bummer is that? So this morning we really want to look at what is love. And my hope that this morning will kind of just be like our chance looking in a mirror and saying, how am I doing? We who know Jesus and love Jesus, we know that true love is God. And it comes from God. And that's his agape love. I found this definition of agape love. It's a love that loves without changing. It's a self-giving love that gives without demanding or expecting repayment. It is love so great that it can be given to the unlovable or unappealing. It is love that loves even when it is rejected. Agape love gives and loves because it wants to. It does not demand or expect repayment for the love given. And we know that that's the kind of love that God gives to us every day, freely. To be exact, I think that it was 32 years ago this coming July. I was sitting at a camp and I heard this amazing speaker sharing a workshop on love. Some of you have heard this speaker because the speaker was my husband. And I was only 16 at the time. But he gave a workshop, and it's the only thing I kept from camp that week. And it was on how God's love, how he wants to transform us. And he used the illustration, and Scott, you might not even remember this, but of elbow macaroni. I have never looked at macaroni cheese the same way. But God comes to give us his love so that we don't store it up and become fat Christians, so that we can let it flow through us. So this morning, we want to look practically. What does it mean to have God's love flow through us? And as I look at this, I think about it's going to be the key to healthy relationships. Take a moment to think about the relationships in your life right now. Those relationships that are thriving. Those relationships that maybe have become a little bit more distant. And those relationships that maybe for some reason have been strained. And my hope and prayer this morning is that God will use this message to help inspire us of what actions can we take. And so the first key to healthy relationships is our attitude of love. 29 years in June, Scott and I stood in front of our family and friends. And my dad came and stood before us on our wedding day. And he read 1 Corinthians 13. And he said, these words might sound simple, but they are hard to live out. And I will tell you that verse 4 can be very challenging for me. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Jacob came to church this morning, and he decided last night to do that. And I asked him as we were driving here, oops, Jake, I forgot. I always have some Jacob stories. So is it okay if I share that? This week has been a week of Jake finishing a class in school. I have not been very patient. If you want to hear more about it, ask Jake. But please give the G version, Jacob. So patience is not something that comes naturally to me. I don't know about you. Patience, that ability to wait. That ability to tolerate delay or trouble or even suffering without getting angry. If you had to grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being excellent, you've been patient your entire life, what number would you give yourself? You know, I think the next one is something that's a little bit easier for many of us is kindness. Of being able to give to people. Being able to be helpful, to think of others. I know that in this room there are so many kind people. This church has been so kind to our family. So thank you for your kindness. Another attitude is that we don't envy. On On Valentine's Day, Scott and I went back to our first date. We went back to Newport Beach and went walking on the beach. And I have to tell you, sometimes it's hard for me to walk and see the homes right on the boardwalk and not be a little bit envious and dream one day, no, I don't think one day I'll ever live on the boardwalk of Newport Beach. And yet, when does envy creep into our lives? True love, when we have the attitude of love, we're going to say, you know what, I'm going to rejoice for you. I'm going to get so excited that people get to live in those beautiful homes right on the boardwalk, looking over the beach every day. That's what it means to not be envious, and it's not proud. Ephesians 4:2 says, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. Be completely patient. What does it mean for you to be patient? I drive to San Diego from Carlsbad every day. Takes me about an hour in traffic. God has tested my ability over the last 5 years for patience. I guess he knew that. My husband is one of the most patient men that I know because he has had to wait hours upon hours over the 28 years accumulated for his wife to just be ready to walk out of the house. Men, any of you have also had to learn that skill? Yeah. So God has lovingly placed a partner in your life just to develop your patience. Isn't that a wonderful thing? You know, I want to be that person though. I want to be able to say, Kathy is patient. Kathy is kind. Kathy does not envy. Kathy does not boast, but I know I've got growth to do. And so I ask us, what is our attitude of love? Well, then there's the selflessness of love. It goes on to say, it does not dishonor others. Or other version says, it is not rude. It is not self-seeking. My mom was one of the most selfless people that I know. She spent her life for others, giving to others. Christmas time was one of the most stressful times because she needed to make over 30 pounds of pecans to go and deliver throughout the community. I remember one day, she was not as lovingly yelling at my dad, you're not going to make it to the bank, you're not going to make it to the bank, as it's Christmas Eve. And my dad's like, it's okay. And she's like, they need their nuts. Because my mom on the trash can would be her pile of nuts. My mom would go to great extremes. I can remember late into the hours, our phone would ring. And my mom would get out of bed to go rush to be with a friend. Selflessness does not come easy in our society. In fact, it actually goes against what really this generation is learning. Because so often now, it's all about me. If I don't like it, I'm not going to do it. I work in the school system. And there's been a real shift with teenagers. Not my own son, of course. But respect is not given until respect is received. And I meet with teenagers. I have a private practice in Carlsbad, and so much of my work is done with teenagers. And over, I sit with teenagers who say, my parents don't respect me, my parents aren't doing this, my teacher won't. And I'll ask, well, what have you done? Well, I'm not going to do anything until they do something for me. And so often, this is where our country is going. So we need to set a different example. What does it look like? I'm going to ask you just to turn to a partner. What does it look like for you? What's the example you have? Maybe in your own life, but maybe in something that you've seen in somebody else. What does selflessness look like? Turn to a partner and share. All right. Okay, my husband just reminded me, because I am getting old. I forgot that I had 2 mics on. So I'm going to put my handheld mic down. You know, one of the things that I find when it comes to giving up the me, it changes the way that I communicate. When I can stop and really think of the other person, there's different ways people communicate. So often, when people are in conflict, I try to teach people the I statement. Anybody know the I statement? I feel blank when this happens, and I would like. Now, it's interesting that I say that because, again, it's the I statement. And yet, so often, people will flip that, and all they will do in conflict is blame the other person. It's you. When you did this, when you did that, when you did this. Versus looking and taking responsibility for myself. I think when we can put away selfishness, we start to look at the needs of others above ourselves. How do you communicate? Notice how many times you might say I throughout the day. Notice when you say you, is it in a, you are so wonderful, or you didn't take the trash out? What's the tone that you use when we talk about that? And so as we look at the selflessness of love, it helps us understand the next key, which is the forgiving nature of love. 1 Corinthians 13:5 goes on to say, love is not easily angered. You'll notice a word that is missing. Not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. How are you at scorekeeping? If you're watching a football game, scorekeeping is very important. Our son Jake, he plays volleyball. And it drives me crazy when after one game, you switch, and they switch sides. And the reason why it drives me crazy is because one side you can never see the score. You can only see it from one side of the court. And I find myself getting more and more stressed when I can't see who's up. And yet, you know, Jake just said, yeah, basically we're always up, Mom, so. Yeah. But you know what? Doesn't that happen in relationships? When people will start to say, I was the one who called you last, why haven't you called me? I'll be honest, I admit I sometimes do that with my own dad. That I'll think, I've called you every week, why aren't you calling me? And you know why my dad's not calling me? It's because my dad is having a second chance on life. Married to my mom's best friend, who my mom wanted him to be married to. And loving every moment as he comes into his 83rd year. Wow. And you know what? That is the most exciting thing. So as soon as I find myself getting into the woe is me, I have to stop and go back. How are you at keeping score? When somebody hurts you, are you like the old chalkboard? And when you go and to erase that chalkboard, what happens? It just kind of smears all over the place. Or are you like the newer whiteboard? Although I have to tell you, whiteboards are even outdated now. Now it's all electric on computers and everything. But on the whiteboard, I might be able to say, you hurt me, but I'm going to forgive you. And I'm going to start to smear it. I have to work a little bit harder to forgive you. And I'm going to press a little bit harder. My hope, my goal is to love like Jesus does. He just takes the Windex on the whiteboard and makes it brand new. This side of heaven, we might not be able to make our whiteboard completely white because I do believe forgiveness is a process. Can you think of somebody in your life who has wronged you? And you have forgiven them in your heart, but you can't forget. sometimes the damage can become a little bit unrepairable. God first loved us. And he wants to share that love and the forgiveness he gives to us so that we can have it flow through us and spread to those around us. I remember driving last October, and I had to almost pull over because I was listening to the news, and I just started to cry at a story that had broken out. See, I had been kind of following the story of an ex-Dallas police officer. I don't know if any of you heard this story, but this gal's name was Amber Geiger. I don't really know how to say her last name. But she was a policewoman who, after a double shift, had gone home, was completely exhausted, and thought she found a robber in her apartment. She called to warn him. He kept walking towards her, and so she shot him and killed him. But it happened that she was a floor off, and she had mistakenly gone into the wrong apartment. And on October 3rd, she stood before the judge to face her sentencing. And as the judge shared the sentencing, a young 18-year-old stood up and asked the judge, could I please come forward? And could I please hug Amber? That young man was Brant Jean, the brother of the deceased. And he said this to her: if you are truly sorry, I forgive you. I'm speaking for myself, but I love you just like anyone else. That's forgiveness. That's my goal. That's taking the Windex to the whiteboard. So the forgiving nature of love is going to transform our relationships. And finally, the action of love. What are the actions that you lived out this last week? Think about. Because I know all of you loved this week. And as we look at these last few things this morning, I want to challenge us. What will our actions be? And as we talk about these last few things, who is it that God is calling you to love this week? Maybe it's to reach out to someone that you haven't talked to, who you're still trying to erase on that whiteboard. 1 Corinthians 13 continues, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. You know, in this day and age, people will oftentimes say that's payback. I hear a lot from teenagers, well, it's karma. They deserved it. That's not what love is all about. Love rejoices with the truth. When somebody does something, when Jacob finishes his class at about 11:57, when everything was due at 11:59, we rejoiced as a family that we no longer had to fight off and battle that sociology class. It was a celebration. Love always protects and always trusts. As I was talking and we were driving here this morning, I said to Scott and Jake, you know, this message is kind of heavy. I kind of need a funny story. And Jake said, Mom, my whole life is funny stories. Why don't you just share one of those? And I know many of you have heard Jacob's stories before. But when I think about protection and trust, I think about Jake as a 3-year-old. Jake has always had a wild abandonment, I would say. He has always been daring. He has always, just whatever he's done, he's jumped into it full-heartedly. And we should have known that from the time he was about 3 years old. We had stairs in our house, and Jacob loved jumping off the stairs. And he always assumed somebody was going to catch him. He just trusted that if a person happened to be within earshot, he would say, "Catch me," and he would be caught. And I'll never forget the day that our friend Ryan walked in the front door. Now the problem was, the front door was here. The stairs ended about there. And Jake was about here, and he said, "Ryan, catch me." Now, Jake was a little cautious. He didn't just jump from here to here, but he went straight from here to there. And Ryan had to do a nosedive, catching my son in the process, because Jacob trusted. I want to be a person who will catch people when they fall. I want to be a person who's trustworthy. And I know that I've broken trust by the things that have come out of my mouth, by sometimes the actions that I've had. I want to be a person who protects. Love always helps and always perseveres. I know many of you have had to face challenging times in this season of your life. You've watched friends in the hospital. You've watched friends have to go be with Jesus. And yet love always hopes. I work with people who are suicidal. And so badly I want to hand them the hope that I have in Jesus. But the problem is, unless we receive it, unless we accept it for ourselves, we're not going to believe it. What do you put your hope in? Because what you put your hope in is going to show how long you'll persevere. If your hope's in money, you only persevere till it ends. I want to challenge us to put our hope in love, because love is God. And when we put our hope in the right place, we will be transformed and our relationships will be transformed. Love never fails. Because I work with kids all throughout the week, I'm going to give you just a dose of story time with Kathy. Because there's a children's book that I love, and I just want to read just a little short clip from it. It's called If Jesus Lived Inside My Heart. If Jesus lived inside my heart, would other people know? Perhaps he'd use all parts of me to love and shine and glow. I think he'd say, "I love you, child, more than you'll ever know. Since you have given me your heart, I'll never let you go. I'll work through you and shine through you, just like the brightest light. I'll guide each precious step you take and help you do what's right. And though I live inside of you, I'm here for all to see. When others see your acts of love, they're also seeing me." Jesus said in John 13:34, "A new command I give to you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." This week, who are you going to go love? What key can you take with you to help transform a relationship? Let me pray for us. Jesus, I thank you so much for your love. That you set the example, and we could not even begin to love without your love. Jesus, people are looking and searching for love all around us. When we go to the grocery store, when we go to the gas station, when we walk across the street. And I pray this morning that you would empower us to be your elbow macaroni. That you would flow through us so that your love could flow out of us. Lord, I ask right now, in the quiet of our hearts, you would reveal to us one person this week that we can love with one of these actions. And so, Lord, we lay these individuals at your feet. And we thank you that you allow us to be your hands and feet. And so would we not miss opportunities. In your name, amen. Corinthians by saying, when I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, and then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Let's go live it out this week.
Amen.